In the last vlog, we took a road trip, found the perfect material to enclose our carport, and used some ingenuity to skip the welder while adding framing for our back wall. In this vlog, we will continue that technique, but take it to a new level. We're going to frame the front wall and doors, complete with a unique lock. Oh yeah, now this is what I'm talking about. We got this thing nice and enclosed on all three walls. And today we're gonna start on framing the front wall. I've been doing mental gymnastics. I actually took a break from this project and I'm coming back 24 hours later. And I've been thinking about how to frame this up. Now, my first solution was to, of course, give it a header. I knew that the bottom needed to stay generally open, but I was gonna have a few segments kick out on each side so that I could run what essentially would serve as like my door jamb or my framing for the hinge side of the doors. I'm gonna start by running one straight piece from here to here. And that's gonna serve as my temporary base plate that I will cut out the middle section of it. But for now, I'm just gonna use one straight piece, measure it and attach it. And then we're gonna go up to the header, do the same. Once I do the header, I will then work on the two door jambs. It's a very overcast day, so it could easily rain. I can smell the moisture. Let's get started so we don't get caught in this. I didn't know it, but the weather was foreshadowing a dark moment in the process of completing this shed build. I was going about my day, doing my typical vlogging, and as I began to attach the first framing member of the day, there it is. There it is. I felt a terrible pull in my back. I knew I was in for a long couple of weeks. It was so bad, I dropped everything and walked into the house as fast as I could. I sat in a high chair, called baby Trep, and told her I left everything outside, exposed, and I need her to come and clean up. And if you remember, it looked like it was gonna rain earlier, so I didn't want any of my tools to be damaged. I was in excruciating pain. It took about an hour before baby Trep was able to arrive. This is still recording. It took me about 10 or 11 days before I was ready to get back out there. We back at it, picking up exactly where we left off. So we jumping right back in because it's taken me up to, I would say, a little over a week before I was ready to actually start this project over again. I kept the base plate long, attached it to the carport on both ends, then I started on the two static vertical members I'm gonna call the door jambs. They run plumb from the base plate up to the carport, and you can see how I created the ears for attaching them. I wanted to maximize the points of contact in an attempt to create the sturdiest framing possible since there wouldn't be much for the front. I strategically chose a width and height that would make the largest opening I could, in case I needed to pull a large vehicle in here. Once I had the two door jambs and base plate, the last main member for the wall was my header. Update, here's my header put in, and what's mostly important is seeing how I decided to tie it. So I took the existing jamb and just tapped in, left a tongue, left a couple of forks or ears on each side, and I left the top open. This is actually the tongue of the jamb that is screwed in, and so the header wound up with 3 connection points. I freestyled it. It is level, of course. That's most important. Using my clamps to get everything level before I started screwing it off. And so now I ended up cutting the extra base plate out, and it left me with these open tubes, but I was smart enough to keep the tongue of the bottom of the jamb, so I'm just gonna bend this down and it'll cover this gap. If I had a welder, this would be the perfect moment to truly seal that cap, but for the most part, I'm just gonna use it to generally keep larger bugs out and dust and rocks and whatnot. And hopefully that flap will be enough. So I'll bend those down soon, but I wanted y'all to see the progress up to this point. As far as I'm concerned, now that I have all of the most important members of the front framing complete, the next thing I'm gonna do, so of course those members being the two jambs and the header, I'm gonna put maybe 1 to 3, I don't know, of course one up the middle, but potentially 2 more cripples above the header and some angle braces down here to stabilize that bottom point that comes from about here to there, something like that. So that'll prevent movement this direction and up and down. Like, this stuff is so firm, I don't expect there to be much flexion, especially once the siding gets added in these areas. I was able to add the bracing I mentioned, but the sun set on me pretty quick. This is what was accomplished yesterday. We got the header in, we got a brace in the center of the header. We've got the door jamb framed up, and we've got our base plates locked in. I was going to use square tubing to brace the bottom of these, but this metal actually comes from the packaging material of the carport. The packaging for the roof panels had metal frames holding them in, so my nephew and I cut it up with the intention to reuse it. Lo and behold, it was perfect for this area of the front wall. I did that bracing just to keep the bottom portion of this from being able to move back and forth. And it's not gonna go up and down because it is tied into the door jamb, which is tied into the rest of the carport at the top. Fairly simple as far as what you see. Now we're gonna move on to the doors, and I've already decided what my measurements are going to be. I've got my first piece sitting here. If you notice, I'm not cutting these with the angle grinder. I've actually put a metal cutting saw blade on my miter saw. I did have to flip that little like locking plate around so that it could bite, because the width of this metal cutting blade is wider than a regular wood cutting blade, just by a little bit. We're going to start building doors today. That's ultimately the goal. Making doors from scratch can be very finicky. I wanted to remove some of the human error that comes from using grinders and other handheld tools, so I opted for the miter saw. As much as possible, I wanted to make the door parts identical. And with my ends cut perfectly square and using my handmade angle brackets, I started assembling the door frames. I used my clamps for keeping the edges of the members flush and holding the brackets in place while I started the screws. Okay. Door 1 is framed. Y'all did not see me do this brace, but I will tell you that I did run my diagonals and make sure this was square before I measured for the angles, and I made a note of what that diagonal should be, which in my case it was 95 3/4 diagonal to diagonal. So I made it square again, and then I screwed these in place after I cut it and did the notch outs. So this is what it ended up looking like, and just this one brace is it completely squared and sturdied up this door 100%. I think the fact that it's a square tubing just makes everything feel that much more robust, and it doesn't need much to stiffen up. Now, I did write on this so that it's understood that this is my hinge side and this is the top. So at any rate, whether this is a left or a right swinging door, I know that this side must be where my hinges go and this has to be the top based on the way my bracing is. If you understand compression versus like tension, you understand that bracing should always be under a compression against gravity. So that's why the lower side of the brace is on the hinge side, and the brace supports a point further from the hinges so that this could never sag. Of course, this applies more when you're dealing with wood than with metal. With metal, it probably wouldn't make a difference because of how rigid it is and the fact that it doesn't like deteriorate, rot, expand, contract, yada yada. But I still follow the same principle. And not to mention, of course, once this thing is sheathed, that'll also give it some rigidity as well. Ooh, door number 1, not even attached, already looking like something. I did buy the hinges. Do I want to try to hang this door today? It's pretty hot, so I don't think I'm going to try to push the situation by attaching some hinges right now. But once I have a second door and it's hung, bro, it's time to sheathe this front piece and we are closed in. I felt it was easier to attach the hinges to the door first, so I measured and piloted the holes, then screwed them on. I ran into a clearance issue with the heads of the screws that attached the header to the jamb, so I decided to cut out a small portion of the outer face of the door jamb in order to get around the issue. I built the second door, and I wanted you all to see the process of squaring and bracing the door frame. And for this, I used a good old ratchet strap to compress the long diagonal and then screwed off the brace to lock it into square. Now that we've got the door square, braced, and hinged, it's time to hang it. Of course, all of the hinges are already attached on the inside, and as you can see, I have a clamp. I've already done my measurements and made my marks, and I'm clamping it at the top and the bottom. I had the door resting on a piece of wood, and of course I had to set a ladder under the wood just so it could be level because the ground slopes this direction. But it allowed me to not have to lift this or maneuver it very much to get it in position and line up the measured out distances. So all I did was transfer the measurements from the door, so the top of each hinge, where each hinge lands, and I transferred it to the jamb. And I accounted for about 1/4 inch at the top, so I added 1/4 inch to the first mark, and then I just transferred everything from there. I attached the hinge side of the doors, leaving the proper amount of clearance on all the edges. And check it out. It looks good, right? Very simple design in all regards, but with such strong metal, it was all I needed. And now, to finish off the framing before I sheathed the front wall and doors, I had to make some adjustments to the hole placement on the latch plates. After that, I sheathed the front wall. I apologize for not capturing the first portion of the process. You didn't miss anything I haven't already showed you. The only thing I did that was different is I took large pieces, attached them, then cut the breaks in afterward to allow the doors to open. Like the back, I made sure the ridges of the front lined up to those of the side walls. And as I was nearing the end of sheathing the wall, it started raining. This was my first time getting an opportunity to see if my roof would leak during heavy rainfall. It did. To be real, I already knew it had leaks because when I returned from my back injury, I saw the signs. But it's one thing to see the evidence versus see the crime. I went on the roof the next day and it was easy to see where the rain was getting in. Keep in mind, I had a bad experience with the roof, so some of my panels had additional screw holes that I did not plug from the initial attempt. So it was an easy and obvious fix once I identified the problem areas from inside. I used the putty tape to patch some areas and others screwed in a roofing screw. Roofing screws have a gasket, so they helped seal these leaks really easily. I've had zero issues since. Once the rain stopped, I cut and installed my final piece. I had to saw off a few bolt ends and cut the breaks in the panels like I previously mentioned. And just like that, we had a fully enclosed 12 by 20 shed made from a carport, complete with 2 large locking doors wide enough to drive a pickup truck through. Here is main issue numero uno. Of course, these panels fit super tight together considering they originally were one piece and then they just got a cut in them to allow the door to swing. So you understand what you're looking at. This is the fixed wall. This is the edge of the door. This is essentially the hinge side of the door. And you can actually see right here, this is a hinge under this corrugated metal. Now, when these doors open, these ribs immediately want to pinch to the point where they do not allow the door to open very much at all. I may get about 1.5 to 2 feet of clearance, but the doors are not swinging whatsoever. So every single point where there's this raised corrugation, I'm gonna have to figure some way to create clearance here. I looked online, I didn't see any solutions to this situation. Here's the hinge with the 2 raised corrugation areas, and let's see if I can illustrate to you what is happening. In that area, as soon as you start to open the door, boom, they pinch, and of course that's gonna cause damage. So I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna what I'm thinking I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create some kind of cut pattern on the fixed side. I'm gonna create some kind of cut pattern, fold the pieces in, flatten it in just this area, and screw it down. I took some time to widen the breaks in the panels and cut the siding flush to the framing members. And the rest is going to be a work in progress, an evolution, painting, shelving. I'll probably get some better hinges. I needed this shed to serve as a second garage for all my lawn equipment. There's plenty of improvements for this structure, but until I get to those things, it is perfect as it is, capable of growing with me and my needs. I've wanted a large shed for years, probably ever since I built my first. I got so much satisfaction from seeing this come to life, solving problems and inventing new solutions. The road to building this one was arduous, to say the least. I took multiple L's, but you can't spell lesson without an L, right? If you've been with me throughout this entire journey, I appreciate you. You are truly a real trepper, a backyardigan, a weekend warrior. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.